Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ellie Knows Rocks. Today we're doing a backyard project, so I'm not out in the field. What we're doing is going to turn this giant rock right here into an actual seat. Since we can't move the rock out of the yard, we're gonna do something with it so that it's useful. It's already flat, but we wanna make it so that you can actually sit in it. And the way that we're going to do that is by using a special saw today. So today's video is sponsored by Vevor. I was sent this gigantic saw, which is usually used for concrete, and it has a water pump and a line, and we're gonna set it all up and use the tools that came with it. But we're gonna use it to saw through this rock. So I hope that you guys are ready for this. I have no idea what to expect. So thank you for joining me on this adventure. Let's go see what happens. I will say the directions were a little bit tricky to figure out, but if you've put one of these saws together before, it's not a big deal. However, the handle was a bit of a problem. The screw hole on the handle did not line up with the actual screw hole on the saw, but eventually we got it to work. Then I undid everything for the water pump, hooked the water pump up to the saw, and filled up a 5-gallon bucket full of water. We're gonna draw on the rock where we want this, and I would be operating the saw today, but I have managed to dislocate one of my ribs, so breathing is an issue for me right now. But we're gonna watch Dan saw through some of this, and I'll try it out just to show you guys that you can use it if you're somebody that's my size. It's not that big of a deal. But where do we want to go? Like here-ish? Start here. Dan and I thought about the design for about 2 seconds and just created a rectangle with a permanent marker so that we would have a line to actually saw through so that we wouldn't mess it up too terrible bad. It was pretty easy. But then, of course, I kind of had to check it out to make sure that at least my butt was going to fit on the rock. And then Dan started in with the sawing. It was pretty simple. It cuts through granite like butter. It was extremely, extremely easy to use. So from here, you're just going to see the process of us creating a seat in the rock. After getting a zip tie for the water hose, attaching it to the saw, I tried out the saw, and it was really surprisingly easy to use, but since my rib was messed up, I let Dan take over. The saw gave us great control at any angle, and it was really cutting through the rock like butter. And so our plan was to create lines all the way through this rectangle box that we created, and then hammer those out and chisel them down, and then cut another layer through in order to break out all the rocks, and then trouble happens. The saw stopped working.
Shut it off?
Huh? I didn't shut it off.
After we assessed all of the electrical components, we figured out that the saw tripped a breaker. When the saw got bogged down, it pulled more amps than we had available to it, so it will trip a 15 amp breaker. So it needs more amperage.
Here's our progress so far. We've had to beat these ones out, and then we're gonna cut deeper and then also crack that open. So paint the feldspar in there.
After I was done admiring the rock, Dan went back to work, and we're actually using his jackhammer to pop off the pieces of rock that we've already cut through. And I got to help too. Some of the pieces were quite easy to knock off of the main rock. Once we were finished removing that first layer, Dan started cutting more lines in the rock using the saw. The more lines we cut in the saw, the easier the rocks were to remove. And they started creating these cool geometric shapes.
How cute is that?
Yeah, little cube.
We used the jackhammer to remove all of the rock that we had sawed the lines through. If we had just been using the jackhammer to do this, there would have been no way that we could have gone through solid granite to make such a perfect shape. It would have been nearly impossible. And here's our finished product. We have the perfect little sitting rock now. Or perhaps I can use it as a flower planter. Who knows? Basically turned a worthless yard rock into something useful with the help of my Vevor saw.
You probably won't be able to hear me very well because of the wind. Anyways, what we're going to do is use the saw over there to cut through a piece of petrified wood so that we can get a fresh surface so that we can see exactly what it looks like. Here is the wood in question. got multicolors. It has a very cool crystalline pattern on the side, and we are going to cut a slice through with the Vevor saw to see how it does. Now there is a good chance that it could crack because the wood's fractured. The saw cuts through the petrified wood just as easily as it cuts through the granite. This is fantastic. The biggest downside to the saw is the blade size. Since it is a smaller blade, flipping it over meant we gave the petrified wood a different stress point, so that's why we cracked the rock. With the red-orange rind on the outside of the rock, I didn't expect it to be gray inside. But it's a perfect slice to see the inner structure. Look at you!
It's not a bad chair.
I think it's kind of cute. If it was deeper,
We can make it deeper or wider.
we could make it deeper. Well, it's fine for my butt.